where we are in sort of the firearms community, this massive industry that exists, and people are starting to come to it more than ever, actually, in history. The revenue that's available there and the opportunity that's available there, it reminds me a lot of fitness 10 years ago, particularly on the social media side of things. But it's not just the social media side of things. Social media just provides the platform for people to show and talk about it, right?
Yeah.
Albeit it's a little tougher to talk about this stuff in this particular genre, that is firearms or whatever, because it's taboo and it's being censored, and
there's a lot of censorship, there's a lot of fear and lack of understanding. And then I mean, like a CrossFit workout, for example, that's my space, right? A CrossFit workout's not going to kill you then and there if you fuck a CrossFit workout up or fuck up instruction with somebody. You're going to get injured, but I mean, it's not going to kill you. You fuck up firearms instruction, you might just fuck around and kill somebody.
Yeah, or just give them some sense of false sense of confidence or whatever, that they do know what they're doing, and then that ends up being problematic down the road, and it could be tragic. Yeah. I just see kind of this. Here's the challenges that I'm having with it. It's very easy to post a sizzly type video, on the gram and get some attention for it, and all of a sudden, just like in fitness, as an influencer would be like, oh, this guy's got cool gear, the high speed gear. He shoots really well. He shoots fast, or at least appears to. He's got this, he's got this cool vibe, right? And it's being honest about it.
Yeah.
Wow. That's some, I aspire to be like that. Yeah. Right. And so it goes from that to somehow that person being then turned into an authority. Right. And that person can automatically sort of be this expert. And my point of that is just like in fitness, there is an extraordinarily low barrier of entry that I don't think the consumer really understands.
Yeah.
And I don't want to make a huge blanket statement and say that they're just dumb. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying they may not fully understand, particularly when you start getting into the world of something that may have been very obscure to them for a long time, like in this case, we're talking about firearms. It could be anything, but low barrier of entry. I can go to a weekend course to become a personal trainer, and now I've got a certificate that's hanging on the wall, and I happen to have abs because I'm in good shape or whatever the case is. I've had success in the gym, and now I'm an expert. I'm an expert. And if I can do really well on my social media, well, then that proves it. You got 10,000 followers. You're an expert, right? Like I should be coming to you.
How the world is right now.
Pretty much how it works. And the reality of it is that's not how it works. And I think the fitness community has policed itself a little bit in the last couple of years. And you're starting to see, you still see a lot of, let's just say, garbage out there, but it's not quite what it was.
Yeah, I think it's much better now in the fitness industry. The information that's out makes it to where it's a lot harder to get bamboozled.
Yep, totally. But the people that are holding the industry accountable to that are come from both sides. It's both the consumer and the industry now is holding the industry to a higher standard, which is where it needed to get to. Because for so long there was that just wasn't happening. You could say and do whatever you wanted without repercussions, or again, with no questioning, and then literally sell somebody something and they would buy it, and people made a lot of money off selling snake oil or whatever it is. I guess my point of it is the consumer got more educated over time.
Yeah.
And the consumer started to hold, with that education, started to hold the industry to a higher standard. They started to ask better questions, started to see through the smoke screens. They started to read through the bullshit, and it has cleaned itself up. So again, my compare and contrast here is looking at the firearms industry. There is so much noise out there. There's so much traffic, and there's a lot of enthusiasm around it, right? Which then drives people to want to be a part of it. And it's the same low barrier of entry to become a firearms instructor or an expert, let's just say a subject matter expert in the field. But what does that really mean? Like, who's regulating that?
Yeah, no one is. And the internet's such a weird place, right? Because no one's like officially regulating that, but like there was an instructor here from the Bay Area that none of us know personally, that got tore up.
Right. Right.
For some of the practices that he was doing and charging really low prices to get into his courses. And I guess his background was military. And so people are like, oh, he's ex-military, I'm going to take his courses. And then after seeing videos and stuff like that, some of his rationale to me personally didn't seem too crazy. But then seeing how he was going about instructing it, I was like, this fucking guy doesn't really know safety or what he's doing, or
it was the application.
Yeah.
But it's one thing to say it and have learned it from somebody or being taught from a, study to take your test or study to pass your course. Yeah. But the application of this stuff is where the rubber really meets the road. And that's where that shit got crazy. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. So, but that guy, like the internet did it. Work on that guy.
Yeah, but how about this jackass out in, where is he, Chicago? The dude, I mean, he's just being clown. I don't know where he is.
Okay, so I've had friends say, you know what? I think that guy's just a media content genius and he's a comedian.
Oh, 1,000%. He is that.
But
he can also be,
I from my own findings before he actually went viral, when I just seen a couple of his videos when it very first started happening months ago, I was like, who the fuck is this guy? You know what I mean? And I looked, and from what I collected, and I could be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure that this is what I seen. Apparently he did some executive protection training on a big level for people who didn't know any better, but he sold himself so well that actual people that were like security for like, I want to say it was like football stadiums and stuff, was training through him and represented him until he became viral, and then some of that stuff went away.
Yeah, it kind of got crazy. I think the point of that is whether the guy is an internet marketing genius, which I'm going to say, yeah, part of this is. I think
at this point,
I think he's a little bit. He's a little bit more sophisticated than most people were originally giving him credit for, and whether you want to believe that or not, there's a lot of people out there that are still giving this guy oxygen by reposting his shit and talking shit about him, which just perpetuates the issue. But now it's become kind of comedy, right? In which case, like, he wins both ways, right? You want to talk?
No, that guy won in this situation.
Yeah,
for sure.
He wins both ways. But for a long time, it was, again, like you said, people were actually going to him for legitimate instruction, quote, air quotes, legitimate instruction.
Yeah.
And he was an authority at whatever level. This is the same on the fitness industry side of things. Right? People can say and do whatever. And as long as people are paying them, they're going to keep doing it.
Because I'll tell you what, man, being in CrossFit for as long as I've been in CrossFit, just because you took a weekend course, man, does not even come close to making you a coach. All that does is tell you corporately what they expect of their coaches.
You've met the minimum standard.
Yeah.
The minimum.
That does not make you a fucking coach.
Yeah, it's the same. So I would say this. I would go one step further, and I would say until you've been coaching for at least 3 years, you are still an infant. I think
that's accurate.
In the industry, because it takes that long to take the reps. You have not had the reps to understand how that theory that you may have learned, whether it was in a 4-year college institution, which then turned into an advanced level degree, which then turned into some certification that you're hanging on the wall in there. You haven't had the practical experience to understand how that theory really looks in the real world at all those different levels. And I'm not saying at 3 years you're awesome. I'm just saying it takes 3 years for you to kind of realize what I just said.
Well, to live through shit, to like experience like all shapes and sizes, all skill levels.
Yeah, so I mean, transferring over to the firearm side of things, I would say it's the same. Just because you spent 3 years in the military, right? And this is not to take away from the time that you spent there. If you spent time as a combat veteran, that's what you were doing. As a combat veteran, I have highest amount of respect for you for putting your life on the line for the reasons that you did it and for representing the United States of America. But just as you may be really good at developing your own body as a bodybuilder in the gym, does not mean you're an expert at coaching people or that you can be a good coach. So it's the same thing. People coming out with, let's say, credentials. I don't care where you're from, whether you're in a line of work that requires you to carry a firearm and that has provided you, or in order for you to get into that line of work, you had to go through some level of education, some level of training, whether that's law enforcement, military, some other government organization, some security type organization. Just because you went through that doesn't make you an instructor. And I think this is something that the consumer needs to understand. Right.
So like if I have an NRA certification, I'm not a good instructor.
And I'm not saying you're not good. I'm just saying that doesn't make you an expert, right?
Yeah.
You know,
fucking with you.
Yeah. So there's any level in between. And I think the instructors that are out there, and particularly the excellent ones, would tell you the exact same thing. They tell you, look, I have my post cert. I have my, whatever they are, my NRA cert. I have that because I need to maintain that minimum standard, but that's where it starts. It's not where it stops. Now, I just have that to make sure that I can get insurance, right? That I can have a legitimate business.
Yeah, that all makes sense. But I'll tell you what, on the CrossFit end, I have a CrossFit L1 Olympic weightlifting cert, kettlebell king cert. I forget, I have one other one. I don't remember, but none of those mattered as much as coaching, like boots on the ground coaching.
I've been in this shit for 25 years. I quit paying for certifications years ago. I was like, what am I doing here? Like the point of that is I never learned more. I learned more in a week on the gym floor than I learned in months of certifications. Now you have to I think you need to go through and do that work. I think you need to establish yourself as, look, I've done these things so that I can, again, call myself a professional. And it doesn't just stop there. And I don't want to go into the long list of things it needs to do, but I'm going to tell you, if you're going out to the range and you're handing the instructor cash every weekend, right? And he doesn't have a legitimate business going, that's something I'd be questioning, because if he's not operating legitimate, he or she operating legitimately that way, probably not operating legitimately in the rest of their life. Yeah. That's just a red flag to me. But, again, going back, like it's not about how many certifications you have. I do care, but it's not going to be the reason I choose you as an instructor, that you went through this particular law enforcement academy, or this particular training, or this particular special operations training, or whatever. I would imagine that you have things to provide and you have some practical application that could be very useful. That doesn't mean you know how to deliver it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you know how to deliver it to the greater market or the greater.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to are you a coach? Or are you an athlete? Are you an athlete who is so good at being an athlete in any sport or CrossFit or whatever it is that you do? You like it so much that you have to pay the bills so you can continue to do it. And all you know is basketball, for example. Right. So you become a basketball coach. Are you actually a good basketball coach? Or are you an athlete who only knows this? Right? A coach is somebody who understands something fully and is trying to bridge the gap between what your knowledge is and communicating it to somebody who's trying to get that, as the new popular term is, knowledge transfer. Yeah, right. Yeah. So,
yeah. And I like that term. And I thought that was defined. What you just said there was excellent. I would agree with you 100%. And you have to meet that client or that consumer where they are.
Yeah.
Right. And in order to do that, there has to be a high level of awareness from both the consumer and the instructor, right? Or the coach. And what I mean by that is, if I'm walking into, this might be more relatable from the fitness perspective. So if I'm a consumer, I'm average Joe, and I want to get in shape, right? Or whatever, I have a goal. I want to be healthier. I want to get in shape. I want to look a certain way, whatever. And I'm thinking about hiring a coach, or I'm thinking about joining a gym. There is a process that most people are pretty familiar with now. If they've been through while still only 20% of the United States population has a gym membership, and the 80% is doing God knows what, there's a large portion of that 80% that has been through the ringer somehow. Like they showed up for the gym tour, they had that initial session maybe with that personal trainer or whatever it is. They kind of get how it works. So what I'm about to say might not sound unfamiliar. And that is basically, look, you show up to the gym, somebody sits you down, they talk about your goals, right? They talk about what your wants are. They talk about what your fears are. If they're good, they're going to start to uncover things like what they'll tell you in gym sales school 101 is you have to figure out what their underlying motivation is. What's the hot button? What's the real reason they're there? They got the wedding and they want to look better than their sister at their wedding, or, they've got the anniversary trip coming up. They don't want to look fat on the beach. They want to look good in a bathing suit, whatever else. And there's layers of all of these things. And then they give you a tour and they show you all the equipment and they introduce you all the people that are essentially going to be the people that, as they're going to tell you, are on your side to help you out and get you to that point. And then they're going to provide you the solution, and they're going to make themselves part of the solution 99% of the time. I'm going to come back to that. And then they're going to tell you how much it costs. And they're going to tell you why this is a great investment for you. And then you're going to have to make a buying decision. And that takes us down a whole other path. The point of that is that might sound really familiar with somebody, or to somebody that's looking to get into a fitness program. It's kind of been figured out. And there's a few different models that you'll see if you walk into different facilities or work with different coaches. But the best coaches, the most successful coaches, are the ones that take an immense amount of time to understand who that consumer is, who that potential client is. And it's as much about deciding or figuring out how to help this client and provide a solution for them as it is about figuring out whether or not that's the right client for that coach. And I don't mean like, do I have the skill set in order to help you with your goal? Do I want to instruct you? Right?
Yeah,
Is this something that I want?
I think that's really good what you just said, all of that. Because I know that as a coach, that every time I'm working with a new individual, whether it's in a class setting or one-on-one, I always start off with, how'd you hear about us and what do you want to accomplish?
Right.
How can I help you with that? Why is it that you want to accomplish? And that's not normal in the firearms community.
No, it isn't.
And it's a problem that I've ran into at multiple companies that I've taken for instruction, where they're not spending any time to vet who's coming in to like gauge where they're at and whether it's their fitness level or actual shooting skill. And that's something that needs to be upgraded. That's something that needs to be touched on if you want to have better business practice in the 2A community as an instructor. As far as I know, I think GBRS Group is somebody who's really good about that.
They highly vet. Yeah, it's very, to my understanding.
Yeah, same here.
And I don't have any personal relationships with anybody there. Just in the research that I've done and what I've listened to and read and seen, they go take it to a very deep level to make sure they're getting the right kind of client for them. Because like for me, I'm a civilian, but I'm highly interested in taking like some course from them. So I've been trying to figure out how to get that done. Right. So with that being said, like, yeah, they vet people. Like from my understanding, they get to know them on like a basic level, just like we're talking about with our background in fitness. Right. And why is that a crazy thing for the 2A community? You would think, like I said earlier, you would think that if I'm pushing somebody in a CrossFit workout, they might puke. It might strain a muscle. If you're pushing somebody in a firearms environment, you might fuck around and shoot somebody. There's a lot of problems with that.
Yeah. So why is it crazy to think that you can't like have a conversation with people and understand where they're at? Like if somebody flat out lies to you and you're teaching a lower level, like some sort of foundation course, like there's not a lot you can do there. It is what it is.
You mean if they exaggerate
like
they embellish
the usual, I grew up shooting guns. Right. I've owned a gun for so long. Yeah. We all know that means nothing.
Right.
You know what I mean? But my point is like, sometimes it's not the instructor's fault. Sometimes it's not the company's fault. If you're running a lower level course, just some sort of like foundation thing. Right. And they just outright lie to you because they need to get in and get training. And this is their way of doing it. Mm-hmm. Or maybe they came in with a friend who's at a higher level, but they want to go with their friend because they're comfortable.
Right.